All right. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the US or Europe. We are here to cater for you today here at the iGaming Weekly News. Nico, Jake, it's great to have you guys here. How are you guys doing today?
Good, thank you, Pierre. Sorry, I thought Nico was going to jump in then. All good though. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine and perfect.
Brilliant. It's a bit of a chicken race there between Nico and Jake to start things off with today. But no, great things here as well. I think we are in the middle of kind of holiday periods at the moment. I'm currently visiting my sister here in Marbella after a couple of days in Morocco the other week here, and then traveling and touring around Europe, or trying at least, because now there's a new strike happening on SAS, the Scandinavian Airlines. So it's a bit of a mess to travel at the moment, but still doing our best here to enjoy the summer as best as we can. However, this is still the weekly highlight here of the week, the weekly news with iGaming Next, and the news doesn't stop because of travels or vacations or whatever it is. The industry is still alive. And so we have a pretty action-packed agenda here, as per always, as we know by this stage. And today we have a couple of points to discuss, essentially, which is, first of all, we're going to move into discussing the recent move by the Netherlands government to potentially ban untargeted gambling ads, including shirt sponsorships and TV ads, and so on and so forth. And then there's another quite big news story of the industry this week, which is that the white paper from the UK in the re-regulation of the Gambling Act there is leaked. It's a story that broke by Earnings and More here the other day. This is a hotly anticipated white paper, of course. The question is, when is it going to be released, and what is the contents within this white paper? And so we're going to go into detail of the leak here and what that revealed this leak earlier. Very interesting for the industry, of course. Another point today is big news from New York. I suppose it's not a surprise anymore, but the numbers when we talk New York are always huge. And the numbers are now released of the first 6 months, in which New York State raked in over $300 million in tax revenue. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Another story that is interesting, just in relation to what is going on in the world at the moment, I suppose, is the fact that Entain has now kind of given guidance to investors that you can expect a lower spend per customer due to the macroeconomic climate that we are moving through at the moment, with the inflation rampant and so on and so forth. This has obviously spooked the stock market somewhat on the gambling side, and caused a little bit of a drawback on that side. And Entain as well, of course, had a bit of a drawback after this statement. Other news as well is the fact that the German regulator is now initiating IP blocking against Lottoland. It's a reoccurring story here that we've had in the last couple of weekly news. The fact that the German regulator, GGL, is now cracking down on the unregulated environment specifically. And so we're going to talk about that as well. And some extra 2 stories if we had time, because the hour is short, as we have learned by this stage as well, is the fact that TBB partners have pulled out of the process to acquire Playtech. This is a saga that has been going on for the last 9 months or so, where Playtech have been courted by several suitors to be acquired, but it ended up with no acquisition at the end. And TBB was kind of the last piece of the puzzle here that fell out. So that has caused another drawback for Playtech now in the stock market, which is down 20% this week. And finally, we'll see if we have time to go through the very colorful story of the fact that a gang got caught running a fake Indian cricket league to dupe Russian gamblers. Well, that's a story that I didn't think I would read out this week, but nonetheless. And we have Nikhil here saying hi from India, which is suitable for that. So we gotta see if we can move over to India a little bit in the later in the conversation as well. And also hi to Ignacio. I'm really sorry for the pronunciation, but nice that we have a worldwide audience here nonetheless with us today. So we're going to start here from the first story in regards to the fact that the Netherlands is now considering to ban gambling ads that are untargeted. So essentially, when you cannot do mass marketing any longer is the proposal from the 1st of January 2023 in the Netherlands, including shirt sponsorships, TV advertisements, so on and so forth. And we have a very special guest here today, which is Erik Connects, who is a policy advisor of NOGA, which is the Netherlands Online Gambling Association. And here we have Erik with us today. Technology is working. How are you doing today, Erik?
I'm all good. How are you?
Brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant. We are doing great here. So, Erik, just to jump into it straight away here, essentially, can you explain what was the latest proposal here in movement by the government to ban the untargeted gambling ads and what this will mean to the iGaming industry?
Yeah, it's never boring in remote gaming, and it's never boring in remote gaming in the Netherlands. The market went live October 1st last year, and obviously license holders started to advertise, and it was a bit on the heavy side. It was quite a lot, which led to political and societal discontent, and that has now resulted in a untargeted advertising ban. And that means that effective January 1st, 2023, TV, commercials, radio, and out of home will be forbidden. Effective January 1st, 2024, there will be a ban on sponsoring of events. And 1 year later, also sponsoring will be banned. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose my first question here is, of course, this comes as a little bit of a negative surprise for the likes of Kindred, for example, who is just entering the Netherlands market, and they just signed a shirt sponsorship here with Ajax. That was supposed to be a big sponsorship here. So in principle, this would mean for Kindred that they are not able to extend this partnership beyond January 1st, 2024. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be 2025 then, because it's shirt sponsoring. The minister said that because sports is so important to make people healthy and stuff like that, there's sort of leeway of 2 years for sponsoring. But indeed, it would mean that after January 1st, 25, all sponsorships have to end. Initially, under the plans of the minister, sports sponsoring wasn't part of untargeted advertising. But then there was a member of parliament who tabled a motion to include sponsoring also in the untargeted marketing ban, and that resulted in the recently announced rules. Indeed, it means that operators who enter the market now, as opposed to the operators who went live in the first wave, they have more limited opportunities to market themselves, and that's of course much to the discontent of some of them, who don't have a legacy in the Netherlands, who don't have a lot of brand recognition, and who can see that their opportunities to make the Dutch consumers known, or to make themselves known to Dutch customers, are drying up.
Exactly. So for the regulated environment, they don't really have that many advantages in, let's say, building brand recognition in comparison to the black market operators with this type of ban.
No, that is true, and that is something, a position we've always been defending, that in a regulated environment, marketing or advertising serves a purpose. It serves to point consumers to the locally regulated product. So in order to channel your players to the locally regulated offering, you need to tell the consumers who the local legal operators are. And almost all marketing advertising opportunities will be restricted. So it's going to be really difficult to channel the players to the locally regulated offering. And we know with NOGA, we're doing a yearly survey. And this year, the survey learned that 70% of the Dutch players have difficulties to distinguish a legal and an illegal operator. And it's going to be even more difficult if those legal operators can't market themselves anymore. So it's a bit of a concern, to be honest.
Yeah, of course, it's a difficult environment, more and more difficult environment for the regulated operators, of course. And it seems from an industry perspective, we understand the challenges that this will bring between for the regulated environments. But in your discussions with the regulator or with the government, perhaps, do they understand these issues? And like, why, in your opinion, do you think that they are enforcing this? Is this kind of like a scoring political points type play, or do the regulator actually understand that this will push players to the unregulated environment, in your opinion?
Yeah, you always have to distinguish between, let's say, technical arguments and emotional arguments, or arguments driven out of emotion, religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, etc. And technically, a lot of stakeholders, I dare to say almost everyone, understands that you need a certain degree of marketing for channelization. But the thing is that some stakeholders are so stuck in their beliefs, in their political views on whether remote gaming is desirable or not, whether it should be there in the first place, etc. That it's difficult to get your technical arguments across the table. Now, the minister has said in one of his letters that basically that was what I said and what we all say, is that you need a certain amount of marketing in order to channelize the players. But then, under pressure of the parliament, he nevertheless, more or less put a full marketing ban in place. And basically what you see is that the technical arguments we have, they're in Dutch we say snowed under by very strong societal backlash, limited political friends, and also the downside of this industry is that there are some people who technically agree with us that it's good to have regulated offering, and you know that people are gonna play like do gambling anyway, so you might as well regulate it to make sure that they'll do it in a safe environment. Some of them, that story resonates with some of the stakeholders. That is a technical argument. The opponents of the industry, on the other hand, they are much firmer in their beliefs, which are negative towards the industry. So if there's a discussion about marketing opportunities, sponsoring, etc., there's a few people who bring in the technical arguments, but they're always just like washed away by like a sea of emotion and religious beliefs and also a bit of preaching, thou shalt not bet. And that's what we see in the Netherlands as well. And it ultimately brings the policy objectives of the Remote Gaming Act, which is channeling and then consumer protection. It brings it further away. It doesn't help. On the contrary, I would say. So difficult situation.
Yeah. Sorry, if I may jump in, Pierre, as well. It's great to have you on the show, Eric. But there's a couple of questions I'd like to ask you as well. And obviously, the Minister for Legal Protection, who is kind of responsible for this, has said, he said himself that advertising is a means of directing people to the legal offer, and he understands that. But I think his argument was addiction prevention outweighs this as a priority for us, basically. And I think you'll know, having worked on the operator side as well for a long time, that these ad restrictions were kind of always coming in the Netherlands and have been quite well communicated for some time now since the regulated offering went live. But it sounds like the shirt sponsorship and the sports sponsorship in particular were kind of thrown in there at the last minute and maybe blindsided the industry a little bit. I'm just wondering what the industry's reaction kind of has been to that, or whether there's any plans to kind of challenge that element of the restrictions, or whether we're going to see, licensed operators try and sponsor football clubs at the last minute just because they've got that soft deadline up until 2025.
Yeah, it is true what you say. We knew that untargeted marketing ban was coming since, I think, December last year. Only the last few weeks we learned that sponsorship or sponsoring would be part of it. A lot of professional football clubs, for instance, but also unions and leagues, they have running agreements with remote gaming operators. Often these agreements run longer than January 1st, 2025. So I assume, and it's what I hear in the market as well, those agreements will be respected until the last day. And of course, we are going to try, for instance, during the consultation, to change the mind of the minister, because, of course, we're also susceptible to the argument of that we should all prevent harmful gambling, etc. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? But we are of the opinion that sponsoring can be done in a safe way, enabling the policy objectives under the Remote Gaming Act without harming and jeopardizing the health of people, most notably young people. So we will, during the consultation, give our view on that and why we think it is possible to do it in a sustainable way. And obviously, we will also seek sort of alliance with the world of sports, because ultimately it harms our industry in the sense that we can advertise and then point to the locally regulated offering. It also harms the world of sports because historically, for decades, there has been a very long and strong relationship between gaming and lotteries on the one hand and the world of sports on the other hand. And it's a shame to just toss it away in full.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for the insight here and on a last minute notice, Eric, for coming on board and sharing insights today. Really interesting what's happening in the Netherlands. And of course, like always, we'll keep following up on these stories as they develop. But yeah, thank you so much for today, Eric, and wishing you a great Friday, Thursday afternoon here.
You too, and thanks for having us.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so interesting stuff here from Eric of NOGA, the Netherlands industry organization here, for sharing some insights with us. And in between topics here, I just want to kind of say hi for everyone in the chat. I love that people are sharing their locations here. So great to see Henry, always an avid listener and viewer here of the chats from a hot UK. Lucy from the US. If you're in the US, are you by any chance at the SBC summit that is taking place right now? That would be interesting to hear. And if so, how is it? Also, Alex from Ukraine. Nice to have you dialing in here as well. Also, Odetta from Romania. Hot issue there as well. And Bogdan tuning in as well. I believe Bogdan is Polish, but I'm not sure if he's in Poland.
And I think Odetta actually occupies a similar position to Eric in the Romanian operator trade body as well, and they're involved in kind of similar discussions at the moment with legislators about a potential tax that's been mooted on consumer winning. So she's probably fighting a similar battle, I would think, at the moment as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yes. Romania is another issue here as well with taxing players. Now that's going to stifle the industry as well. Martin Frint, nice to have you here from Apparat that we covered the other day. And Merhaba Elif from Malta, but she's Turkish, so I'll use my very limited Turkish to say hi to her, and so on. So, all right, guys, let's move on to the next topic, shall we? Earnings and More broke a really interesting story yesterday, which is on the hotly anticipated UK Gambling Act white paper that is set to be released kind of like at any moment. However, the issues, let's say, in the UK politics as well has put doubt is if the white paper is going to be published soon or if it's going to be postponed. But Earnings and More, they broke the story yesterday and had a potential leak here of the white paper that detailed what the white paper will entail. And also they spoke about the fact that the white paper is set to be announced at some point next week already. So I want to just kind of jump over to you, Jake, here, obviously UK born and bred and raised as you are, to kind of talk us through this story a bit and detail a little bit what the white paper potentially will contain here, as it's being launched next week.
Yeah, of course. Firstly, huge credit goes to Earnings and More and my journalist colleagues over there, Scott Longley and Jake Pollard, who they have an awesome newsletter, and if you don't subscribe to that, it's well worth doing, in my opinion. But yeah, they got their hands on this exclusive leak of the government white paper, which just had a bit more detail, as we've discussed, on what we could expect to see when the findings are published. And the kind of key theme throughout has been, at what point do these affordability kind of credit checks kick in on player accounts? Because that's what consumers, for the most part, have been worried about. And the paper basically said that these checks would kick in at net losses of £125 per month or at £500 per year. now operators and politicians have said that customers won't even notice these checks occurring. They're kind of in background credit checks that operators are kind of conducting in the background now anyway. Certainly those that are on the front foot of kind of introducing their own responsible gambling software in advance. But as somebody pointed out on Twitter that I found quite funny, you can't even buy the Racing Post newspaper every day for a month without spending £125. So they're kind of slightly lower thresholds than we thought. And then there's also going to be detailed checks on losses of £1,000 within 24 hours. Which were probably well signalled again, and a £2,000 net loss over a 90-day period. The other things that were kind of confirmed that we knew about already were the stake limits for online slots, which looked like going to between £2 and £5, unless you can prove that you're kind of a higher staking customer and you can afford it, in which case it might go up to between £10 and £25. But it will certainly be capped. It's not going to be kind of, unlimited like it has been for a number of years now. And yeah, the whole situation in the UK is quite funny, really. There's, absolute turmoil happening in Westminster that's kind of put this white paper in jeopardy, but it does sound like they're going to try and force it through by the end of July, even though there's no minister for gambling at the moment. When I tweeted the other day about the Dutch marketing ban that came in, and it got loads of traction from basically people who want to reform the UK gambling sector, saying, this is what we need to be implementing. We need a complete marketing ban, shirt sponsorship ban, and that kind of thing. And those voices have been incredibly loud throughout this debate, and they've lobbied really well. But there could still be a spanner in the works at the last second. We could see a politician intervene and potentially change these numbers that have been reported. It's worth pointing out this was from the first draft version of the white paper, so it could have changed multiple times since then. I guess we'll have to see.
Absolutely, and I suppose the number one kind of let's say detrimental point in this that is detailed so far is these more detailed affordability checks that kicks in if you lose more than £1,000 within a month, or within £2,000 within 90 days, which is estimated to kind of stifle the amount of gambling, especially the high net worth individuals would conduct, because obviously in order to go through these kind of advanced affordability checks, it's a quite tedious process for the individual player to actually go through this process and in the correct papers and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. That limit. Yeah, that's exactly it. Especially for that limit, that's the £2,000 net loss over 90 days. That's where you start to get asked for your bank statements, and these checks become a little bit more invasive. And the Racing Post has said that that £2,000 net loss over 90 days could potentially cut billions of pounds of revenue, and between 20 million and 30 million from the levy that goes towards horse racing. So there's kind of stakeholders right across the industry that are concerned about the outcome of this review.
Interesting. I just want to point out another funny thing that I heard. I can't remember exactly who said it, but someone pointed out that they had been speaking to a while ago, a number of years ago, someone from a lobby group within the tobacco industry. And obviously in the tobacco industry, I've kind of gone through this process. It feels like a bit. It feels like we are going through a similar process now with drawback on marketing and ability and so on, which the tobacco industry has gone through a number of years in the past already, which they are not able to do with TV advertisements, not being able to showcase their products within movies and things like this, which they were able to do previously. And someone pointed out within the tobacco industry that this has been great for the tobacco industry, because it means that the competitors within the tobacco industry don't have to outspend each other marketing-wise in order to gain more market share. They are still selling their products, but they don't have to bring this enormous marketing spend in order to kind of win percentages against each other. So I guess that's the other side of the coin here, so to say. But that is the other kind of debate, which is not detailed in the white paper specifically, but on the again kind of continuing the discussion from the Netherlands, shirt sponsorships and sports sponsorships and so on, is also the fact, of course, that the Premier League clubs are also being pushed to not allow shirt sponsorships as well. Then here, so in the UK, the story is quite grim for the industry. That's the feeling that I'm getting. I don't know, Nico, if you have any thoughts here on this point, and what's your feeling in general on the direction that the UK is heading at the moment?
So first of all, with the banned shirt sponsorships, we are just waiting for the final decision, which will happen latest next week, Wednesday, by the 20th of July, where at least 14 Premier League clubs need to vote with their kind of yes, we don't want any further gaming-related shirt sponsorships anymore. We are speaking about, if I'm not mistaken, 43 million pounds per year in sponsorships. So for sure, we will just see how this one turns out. But just having another look at the white paper, when you're just having discussions with people actually gaming or gambling in the UK, they just see this as one of their hobbies. Like, okay, I'm just going to a racetrack. I'm just wager some money during online sports betting. And if they would now know that as soon as you hit the 125 net loss within 1 month, which can quite easily happen, then passive checks will apply. I'm pretty sure that just drives customer towards the black markets, because they just don't want to have this kind of passive checks where you don't know what will be checked. Right. And then, with this kind of handing in the bank statements of if you just lose £1,000 within 24 hours, if you just party hard in London, you can easily spend £1,000 just on a night out with your mates. Right, I'm not speaking about after work drinks in a pub, but if just hit a club, share some drinks, share a bottle. If this
Nico,
would
do
be...
you have any extra job at Bet Is Best? It seems like it seems like your spending habits are
club promoter,
quite generous.
Been there, seen that.
I was £1,000 on a night out. Yeah, I mean, it's a Wednesday afternoon, I suppose.
If you have once seen the good, bad, and ugly of investment banking, you just hit the £1,000 within 5 minutes after you just reach a club, and that's cutting a long story short. But yeah, we were just seeing, as Eric pointed out, we should always keep in mind that having a regulated market should be very attractive to operate in that market in. And if we just think about Bet-at-Home actually leaving the market already, not extending their license, who will be left in the market? First of all, William Hill, as of now, is owned by 888. If they can't operate the market in the UK in a reasonable way, maybe they will pull out as well. So there will be no betting shops anymore for William Hill, probably Ladbrokes as well. So, all the consequences linked to operators not being able to operate in a specific market in a reliable and worthy way, this will just, first of all, draw people into the black market operations, and then out of a sudden, the regulated market will disappear. And I'm pretty sure this ain't something which the regulators are looking forward to. A politician, it's always low-hanging fruits. If you start out with, okay, we want to ban gaming advertisements, etc., and this is something we discussed for quite often already, it's low-hanging fruits. It's low-hanging fruits, and then people can actually join the bus, hop on the bus quite easily, but usually people kind of forget all about all the consequences.
Yeah, and Nico, you make a good point, as well. It isn't just investment bankers and people spending thousands of pounds a month on gambling that are going to be impacted by checks at this levels. It's the hundreds, if not thousands, of recreational horse racing bettors in the UK that quite easily would stump up £125 losses over the course of a month without any kind of problem gambling behaviour at all. And I think the Racing Post tweeted their story on the Earnings and More exclusive, and all the replies, it's like 200 replies or something saying this is the death of the UK industry. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to bet on the horses anymore. And it is quite a bleak kind of doom and gloom outlook in the UK right now. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't voices that are kind of fighting the industry's corner. That the lobbying effort continues right up until this paper is published. We saw today a British MP put out an opinion piece which said, this is such bad timing for a gambling review. With all that's going on with the Prime Minister resigning and everything else, we need to postpone this in order to get it right and make sure it's in the interests of consumers. And that was the MP whose constituency was Stoke-on-Trent, which, believe it or not, is where Bet365 is headquartered. So
I love that so much.
You could have guessed it, really.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's amazing. And another thing that emerged yesterday was the fact that from 1 minute to the next, Evolution shares they crashed, they tanked a bit yesterday, about 8%, something like that. And the investors were speculating that was due to the fact that the US inflation numbers were released yesterday. And the US inflation, it turned out the highest inflation in 40 years. More interest bumps are coming and so on and so forth. But we were saying internally here that it's probably not because of the inflation news that the share price tanked, but rather because of the limitations on slots to £2 to £5 per spin, essentially, which would kind of stifle revenue within a company like Evolution as well. Since then, Evolution has recovered a bit, so the stock did recover somewhat. But I think investors generally actually missed this point because the E&M newsletter, as good as it is, it has a quite limited reach, mainly within the industry. And I think investors perhaps missed the story of Earnings and More yesterday, or at least the smaller investors missed the story here that came out a bit wider today, perhaps. But yeah, nonetheless, interesting movements here in the UK, and we will see then if it holds true that the white paper is going to be released next week. I would assume as well that within the government at the moment in the UK, within the Parliament, things are probably changing on a day-to-day level at the moment, and relevant movements yesterday perhaps is irrelevant today. So we have to wait and see until the white paper is actually released, until we understand more about this story. Next up is New York, as a reoccurring topic that is showing up a lot in these weekly news podcasts as well, which is the fact that in the first 6 months, the state of New York has managed to rake in an excess of $300 million in tax revenue. And so Jake, I'm gonna kind of leave it over to you. And I know that Nico, you as well are an avid follower of the state of New York movement. So, but Jake, can you start off by giving some input in the story, and then perhaps Nico, if you want to chime in here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, this came from the New York governor's office, Governor Kathy Hochul, who basically put out the figures for the first 6 months since New York's regulated online sports betting market went live. And since the 8th of January, I think it was when the operators launched in the market, it's basically generated $302.3 million in tax revenue for the state of New York, which is more in tax revenue than any other US state has generated since 2018. So that kind of puts into context the scale of the New York market and just how big a sports betting market it is, and probably also explains why operators are so keen to see kind of similar movements in states like California, where the population levels can kind of match up to that. But what was particularly interesting for me was the follow-up of this story from our new reporter, Ryan Butler, who he touched on an interesting angle that basically, even though New York has exploded since January, the neighboring states like New Jersey, for example, they haven't been negatively impacted at all. Because what basically commentators were saying was that before sports betting was legal in New York, you had all those customers and those punters kind of going across the bridge to New Jersey, or basically traveling across state lines to wherever they could get a bet on. And it was thought that once New York legalized, that there would be a roughly kind of 25% decline in betting handle in New Jersey. But that hasn't materialized at all, because New Jersey generated 4.1 billion in betting handle during the first 5 months of 2021. And then for the same time period in 2022, it's actually generated 5.1 billion. And that's since New York went live. So it's not had a negative effect on New Jersey at all, which is also kind of continues to go from strength to strength. But yeah, there's also the tax rate to consider, which I'll pass over to Nico, because he kind of raised that point smartly earlier.
Yeah, so in the end, first of all, numbers are still crazy. 302 million in taxes. And when we just had the discussion with Senator Edible, he was like, there has never been any other industry actually claiming or going towards a state like, okay, please legalize us and we will hand in tax revenues. And as we can see, 302 million are decent tax revenues, but we should never forget, at a tax rate of 51%. So the entity gaining the most out of legalizing sports betting is the state itself with 51%. And the operators are left with 49%, and they still continue to actually operate in that specific market. So we should never forget that 51% is the tax revenue, which will directly go to the tax authorities in the state of New York.
And worth adding to this as well is that the 302 million is based on the GGR that was generated in the first 6 months. But there's another $200 million tax revenue in license fees as well from the 8 regulated operators in the environment as well, who are contributing to license fees. Total, there's more than $500 million that has been generated, more than $500 million in tax revenue for the state of New York. And the estimate before the regulation came into play was 361 million. So actually, rather than
for the whole year,
61, I think the estimate was for the first 6 months, if I understand it correctly. Okay. And the actual tax revenue so far, including, and this 361 million was including the license fees, whereas the current amount of tax that generated is surpassing 500 million, which is absolutely incredible. So, and this money is set to go to sport initiatives, to responsible gambling initiatives, and for society at large as well. So it's going towards pretty good causes, you could say as well. So all positive note there. And Nico, you mentioned that it's kind of the state that is benefiting the most here. I would actually argue that it's the state is the only beneficiary so far. Because the operators are not really making any profit so far in the state of New York, and it remains to be seen if it can be turned profitable, the state here. So yeah, interesting. All right, on to the next story. Just moving on and talking a little bit more about the macroeconomic climate at the moment, which is also a reoccurring topic here in the weekly news broadcasts. As we all know, and especially those of us who are investors, the macroeconomic climate is very scary at the moment. There is not much upside. There is mostly downside on the markets right now. Again, inflation numbers from the US coming out yesterday with very bleak reports. telling the story about further interest rates increases coming up here as well, which again is going to affect the market negatively. And so the climate is just not looking super positive right now. And putting fuel on the fire here, the Entain communicated to the shareholders the other week that they are seeing an effect of the inflation rates now in the fact that they are seeing about 5% less spend across the board from their customers due to inflation-related causes, let's say. And obviously this has caused the Entain's shareholders to be quite spooked. And obviously the Entain share prices fell on this news last week, but it had actually recovered since then, which is important to point out. But again, Jake, jumping over to you here, covering this story at iGaming Next, can you go deeper into this story a bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. And I'm probably going to, reveal too much of my nerdy side now. But Entain CFO Rob Wood is the best person to listen to on these quarterly report calls. So if you're like me and you tune into every single one, you're kind of rubbing your hands together when Rob Wood's going to take the mic, because he just provides so much detail and color compared to a lot of his colleagues. So yeah, credit where it's due. But yeah, sometimes to his detriment, I think, because it means analysts can, weigh up all these numbers in really concise detail, and then that can go on to impact the share price, as we saw last week. But you summarized it really well, Pierre. Basically, you said that, the macroeconomic environment has combined to cause a kind of 5% drop off in customer spend per head in the UK, which has in turn contributed to a 15% drop off in GGR, online NGR, from the UK for the first 6 months of the year. Yeah, really interesting. He said, obviously, different territories have different economic environments. He's like, they're not seeing any signs of this in Australia, where they're obviously live with Neds and Ladbrokes, but in other countries like the Baltics, for example, where they bought N Labs. He said, like, inflation's at 20%, and you'd be crazy not to see an impact on spend per head at those kind of figures. What was really interesting for me, though, was that in the UK especially, it seems pretty clear that the decline is based on a blend of the macroeconomic downturn, but also the cost of Entain implementing these affordability measures that we've just talked about, which are costly. They're costly things to do, these responsible gambling procedures that are going to be forced on these operators. And one analyst kind of suggested to me that this might be damaging Entain more than some of its competitors, because they've already implemented a lot of these soft affordability checks, whereas Entain is having to kind of play catch up now. An example he used was that Flutter and 888, for example, have had voluntary £10 stakes on online slots games for some time now in anticipation of the review, whereas Entain hasn't. So obviously, if it does then have to, put a threshold on, it's going to cost it more than those other two companies. But yeah, really interesting. Rob Wood said himself, on the question of affordability, it's hard to pick the competing drivers. And he was talking about cost of affordability or the macro climate. He said, how much of that is affordability versus macro conditions? It's hard to separate with any confidence. It's very hard to unpick the two, so I wouldn't attempt to do that myself. Obviously, the analysts will have to attempt to do that, so I don't envy them. But yeah, just some really nice colour, I thought, and it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues into Q2 reports of their main rivals, so Flutter and 888 and a few others that we can expect to report this month.
Very interesting, Jake, and it is this kind of question that is hot right now, which is will the rampant inflation and difficult macroeconomic climate, how will it affect the spending habits and the revenues on to the operators? And this gives us a first glimpse into the fact that it's possibly a detrimental factor to the spending habits of the customers of the operators. So it will be very interesting to see now the reports coming out. And there's another factor here, which is the fact that, like I said, I'm currently in Marbella at the moment, and the streets here are packed with tourists, and this is the first time since 2019 where they have a proper tourist season. A lot of British people, I might add, some rowdy, some less rowdy, not like yourself, calm and nice, Jake, but nonetheless, this is the first summer where we see a large amount of people traveling and going on vacation again. And I would be very curious to see how the Q2, Q3 reports look like from that perspective as well. Just the fact that it's the first summer, a lot of people are now going on actual vacation rather than staying inside in lockdowns or staying at home because they perhaps are not so comfortable to go out, and so on and so forth. And a lot of things have happened in these 2 or 3 years since we saw a proper summer before. So it would be interesting to see how that as well will affect the quarterly reports. We have another 10 minutes here, guys. So let's jump over just quickly as well to another story here, which is again staying on the macroeconomic climate. And a lot in the background, what I hear, what I see is that there's a lot of M&A activity that is being interrupted at the moment from the macroeconomic climate. And if we rewind the tape about a year, we saw M&A activity and investment and new products and startups popping up almost every day. And what we are seeing now, which maybe not exactly make the news because it is basically news that didn't happen, is the fact that a lot of deals that are close to being signed are now being cancelled. Okay, so there's the influx of capital from investors have seemingly stopped right now. From major investors in all sectors and also the gambling industry. But one story that made the news now on that line is the fact that the potential acquisition of Playtech by TBB Partners was cancelled, right? Due to the challenging marketing conditions. And we saw the news breaking here. It was if it was today or yesterday. And this caused the share price. Yeah, this morning, yes, and it caused the share price of Playtech to tank about 20%. I think they are currently down 17.5% on the stock market. And if we compare that to when the acquisition proposal was made in October, we can now see that, and obviously when the offer was announced to acquire Playtech, the share price was £429 just before the offer was made, and now we can see that the share price is 428. So the share price has actually come down to the same level as it was before the acquisition, or not the acquisition, before the bid to acquire Playtech was announced here essentially, and so. I thought it was quite interesting as well here, just talking about the macroeconomic climate again. The fact that there is a lot of deals that are just not going through for the moment. Investors are waiting to see what is going to happen, and this is obviously bad news for a lot of speculative and organizations, and a lot of organizations who are not currently profitable, because seeking investment in this environment is just not that easy. And again, looking at the US startup market, for example, I wonder how many startups in the B2B space in the US at the moment who are currently having a lot of sleepless nights due to the fact that it's just very difficult to raise the next round. Whereas like 1 year ago, it was as easy as snapping your fingers to get money and to fund your business. Question mark, what's going to happen there? And obviously Playtech now is without an acquirer, back to business. And I know, Jake, you wrote about the fact that they will probably look inwards now again towards their existing products. They did just offload one of their products internally, but feel free to go a little bit more into this story.
Yeah, sure. No, I think you've said it exactly right, Pierre. And I think today's announcement shows how much weight investors put in kind of M&A activity as well, because at the same time, Playtech announced that EBITDA for the first 6 months of this year is expected to come in 61% higher than the same period of last year at 200 million. But like you say, the share price still dropped off 20%, and it's still down. And you're right. I mean, we've seen. I think it was kind of a huge risk initially from Playtech, if you remember, because shareholders basically rebelled against that aristocrat takeover initially to basically try and get a better offer for the company, which seemed like it was forthcoming from TTB bond partners, and then they've not been able to follow through on that because of the macroeconomic environment, basically, and challenging underlying market conditions, as you pointed out. So they kind of threw all their eggs in that one basket, and now they're back to square one a little bit without an acquirer.
Exactly, and as we can see here, this is essentially the period from where the first bid was announced back on the 14th of October, and obviously the very tumultuous times that took place in between here, as you described, Jake, and now obviously the bid did not happen, and share price fell back to where it was before the deal was announced. Although, as you very relevantly point out here, the EBITDA is a lot higher now as it was done. But this is also true for, say, Evolution, which has actually lost about 50% share value since the same period, although they also have gained a much higher EBITDA as well. So it's just a very, very difficult environment right now.
And this isn't the only example of it either, because if you remember, 888 was able to negotiate like quite a substantial discount on its purchase of William Hill from Caesars, and that was because basically the market conditions had changed so significantly from when the deal was announced to when it completed that they ended knocking off like quite a hefty chunk of the value in the end.
Absolutely interesting. Guys, we have 4 more minutes, which is just absolutely perfect to cover the last story of today.
Wait. One thing. Okay. Yeah, wait. One thing I'd like to add. You know, we've been if we just take a look at the last 2 or 3 years, you know, with the big numbers flying around, like, okay, we have some unicorns in the industry, market cap just crashed. Happened quite often. If you just take a look under the hood of a deal, N26, they just raised the capital of 1 billion. If you just take a look at the deal itself, they promised these investors, first of all, it's all about the liquidation preference. So if a company gets sold, who will get money first, right? So it's where you are in the food chain. So which company or whatever company invested the 1 billion into N26 during the last round had the liquidation preference of 1. So whenever anything is sold from the company, they will get their money first. In addition, this 1 billion euros they invested into the company will have an internal interest rate of 25% per year. So when the company is sold for 4 billion in 2 years, first of all, those who invested the 1 billion will get 500 million as on their investment. So then the deal which we have seen within the last couple of years, they don't turn out to be that nice and decent for the companies actually looking for money. So as of now, as the climate totally changed, even these kind of crazy interest rates where you literally sell off your company, even these things don't get the money from the investors. Just as a side note, as I was just listening to a quite interesting podcast yesterday where one of the investors actually told how the investments of the last 2 or 3 years actually turned out.
Really interesting. What's the name of the podcast, Nico?
It's a German one. It's OMR, online marketing rock stars. But it's worth listen. You know, there was Philipp Gerber. He was one of the founders of Lieferando. He was just giving some insights on his points of views.
Fair enough. Step 1, learn German. Step 2, listen to podcast. Nico, last story of the day, which is really lighthearted and you could say a bit fun one actually. I mean, I'm gonna say fun, which is the fact that there's a really intricate scam that happened in India, where a fake Indian cricket league was set up in order to dupe Russian gamblers. Can you go into this story, Nico, as a lighthearted ending of today?
Yeah. So first of all, when I was just reading the headlines, like, okay, there was a so-called gang and they set up a fake Indian Premier League, which actually started 2 weeks after the official league. And this tournament with farm laborers, so not pro cricket players, just farm laborers. They were acting as players and just to dupe Russian punters in a betting scam, which reminded a lot of people onto the movie of 1973, The Sting. First of all, I'm pretty sure this was just possible due to the sanctions which actually occurred to Russia. So this fake Indian Premier League tournament was the only one where Russian punters have been able to actually put their bets on, and that's why the Indians were so happy to actually, deliver their offerings to the demand. And the hired laborers and unemployed young people have been paid 400 rupees, which is equal to 4.2 pounds per game. And the matches had been broadcasted live on a YouTube channel called IPL, which is the Indian Premier League, and no one actually doubted it. And in the end, the overall kind of scam was found out and investigated. Just let me have a look.
But I think they wasn't the umpire himself was in on it as well, when they basically radio through to the umpire to say you've got to hit a 6 or you've got to hit a 4, and then he would tell the batsman. But they even they brought in the proper lighting from a cricket stadium and everything else, so it was a really well executed con. Yeah, great story.
Yeah, indeed, it was a great story. And bets had been placed on a Telegram channel, so which has been set up by the gang, and they had been alerting fake umpire on the pitch using walkie-talkies, and I'm pretty sure they kind of rearranged how the games should actually turn out. But yeah, first of all, you're thinking like, yeah, this only happens in the gaming industry, and we're like, we always face this kind of stigma, like, okay, yeah, only the house wins, etc. And this usually plays in the likes of people who actually don't like our industry as well. But you will find these kind of setup and fake things in each and every other industry as well. In the banking industry, Wolf of Wall Street, who literally sold off the penny stocks, etc. The automotive with their scandals. But if you just think about anyone being able to actually please the demand in Russia, and then you just see people setting up a whole league. Crazy.
You can say a lot of things about these people who went to great lengths to set up a fake cricket league on the pitch with background audience sounds and proper team names and everything like this. But you cannot call them dumb. That is for sure. guys, Nico, Jake, it's been an absolute pleasure, as per always, to do this things with you guys. What do you say? Shall we head down to the beach and have a pina colada?
Yeah, I think so. I think we need to get our regular viewers playing a weekly news bingo as well from now on. So every time we say evolution or macroeconomic, they can put a little tick on their sheet from next week.
That's a great idea, Jake. There'll be a lot of drinking happening, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we missed one thing. Pierre, thanks for reminding me and us. Last week, it has been the International Day of the Pina Colada. Unfortunately, I don't have a pina colada yet, but I will join you on the beach for sure, just to celebrate the World Pina Colada Day, which, if I'm not mistaken, happened last week on a Friday.
I thought that was every day, Nico. Well, Pina Colada Day.
Every Thursday.
If you're around, Pierre, it's every Thursday.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Take care of each other. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. We see you here next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. CET. Take
Thanks
care
for listening,
and have
guys.
a good day.
Bye.